Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Big Bash Show. My name is Shura Taft, and this week we are going to be previewing the big final between the Perth Scorchers and the Sydney Sixers. And of course, I'm calling upon the resident expert for his opinions and knowledge on cricket. I talk about Mr. Jese Hogan from The Age. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, now it's time to have a look forward to the final between the Scorchers and the Sixers. Of course, two very big teams who've done very well over the tournament. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, especially late in the tournament. I mean, there's been sort of times where you look at the first game, the Scorchers, I thought I actually had them as the big loser of the first round after losing at home to Hobart, failing to defend a pretty modest, failing to chase a pretty modest total. And then, Sydney, in terms of glamour, you had the other Sydney team that had Warner and Gale, but they have just gone and had a really smart recruiting strategy, a lot of depth all across the board, and while they've had some injuries, particularly to Cummins and Watson, who haven't been seen, and even Steve O'Keefe, who's only just got back, they've managed to fight their way through all of that, and I think really deservedly got in the final.
All right, it's going to be a very interesting final indeed. On this show, we're going to be going through both teams' roads to the final, and also look at a couple of matchups that are going to be key to one of these teams winning the Big Bash final. All right, now it's time to look at the season that was for these two teams in the lead up to the Big Bash final. We start with the home team, the team that finished on top, the Perth Scorchers. How have you seen their road to the finals?
I think one of the most impressive things about managing to finish on top and actually obviously host the final is that because of the way the Big Bash League draw works, every year it's sort of you either get 4 games or 3 home games. And while it's not so much of an issue for the Melbourne and Sydney teams because they're just travelling a few kilometres down the road, it really is a big issue for the other sort of cities teams. And Perth's actually one of the teams that only had 3 home games this year, so they can't really say they had a big home ground advantage to call on, and they still managed to get there, and after losing the first home match at home. So yeah, really their form on the road was just superb, and even if it hadn't have been for that narrow loss at the end for the Sixers, they could have had close to a perfect record.
All right, and onto their opponents, the Sydney Sixers. How'd they do it? How'd you see their season?
They've just been, I think, the quiet achievers all the way through. They've had some decent losses, like they got beaten pretty easily by the Renegades, who actually, finished second last. They got beaten by the Hurricanes, but then they came back and beat the Hurricanes when it mattered. They've just been really, they've just got the job done. Nothing too flashy about the way they've gone. Their batting in particular, I haven't had any particularly big, individual scores. Nick Maddison's been, really consistent throughout. But apart from that, they're just getting good little efforts from everyone, and that's how they've got here.
A very consistent effort across the board from the Sixers. Well, it's going to be a very interesting final. Up next, we're going to have a look at some of the key matchups that are going to decide whether the Sixers or the Scorchers walk away with the chocolates. Time now in the Big Bash Show to have a look at some of the key matchups in the big final. We talk about the bowlers versus the batsmen. Who are the ones you're looking forward to see, Jesse?
It's funny, we spoke last week about the thing I wanted to see in the Stars versus Scorchers game is something like a Mackay versus Gibbs matchup, because at the start Gibbs is just so vital to the Scorchers' hopes, and I really wanted to see the Stars' best pace bowler get a go at him. That didn't happen in the end. I think they opened with David Hussey and Jackson Bird, and while he did get dropped, Gibbs, in the end he went on to a big score and the Scorchers won the game. So this game, I think, if you look at the Sixers, because of Test duty, their new ball attack should be Brett Lee and Mitch Starc. I really hope it is. Probably the most lethal attack going around at the moment. And I think it'd be really good that even though you do have the option of taking the pace in the ball, I want to see the Sixers be attacking, go in there with Lee and Starc, really attack Gibbs from the start, and if they can, getting him early within sort of the first 4 overs, and maybe with if you can get Mitch Marsh and Marcus North as well, one of those two, that would be a massive advantage for them. So yeah, be aggressive. Do your 2 best bowlers, best pace bowlers at the start. All
right, so Lee and Starc to take on some of the key Scorchers batsmen. What about the spin options? Who are you looking forward to seeing the matchups in that regard?
Well, they're not exactly going to be going head to head. I think it's just fantastic that we see the 2 best spinners in the competition are 2 of the oldest in Brad Hogg and Stuart MacGill. Brad Hogg was incredible again in their semi-final, and Stuart MacGill did the same, got the crucial wicket of Travis Burt. I'm just really interested to see how they go. Both sort of out the back of the hand bowlers, and probably Hoggy's probably a bit more athletic than Stuart MacGill is. They've both totally justified their spots, getting the minimum contracts here. Both actually after this off to play in Bangladesh and possibly the IPL too, which is a good mark of their quality. And so it's not naturally sort of spin-friendly conditions at the Wacker, but you've seen how Brad Hogg's gone there. Brad Hogg can move the ball there, and I think Stuart MacGill moves the ball at least as much as Brad Hogg, so that'd be really good to see how those two go.
And Hoggy getting the national call up as well. That was a big call for a man of 40 years old.
But a right decision, a very good decision.
Yeah,
He's
very
been
happy
by clearly the most effective spinner in the competition, and not only dangerous but also very economical too. And because there's a World 2020 later this year in Sri Lanka, I think it was an excellent decision.
I've got a feeling, and I know this is not a key matchup, but I've got a feeling that it's going to take some serious fielding on both teams' part to win the game. You know, there's going to be some big catches.
And I think if you look on that, that's probably one area where the Sixers have the edge. You know, the Scorchers have been good in the field, but some of their players are a bit older, guys like, you know, Paul Collingwood, Marcus North, Simon Kaddish. But the Sixers, they boast some really incredible fieldsmen, guys like Steve Smith and Steve O'Keefe. So I think that's one area where they will really not give up any runs at all. Fantastic
Analysis there. All right, up next, we're going to predict a winner, go through it all, and that'll be it for the Big Bash Show. All right, well, that's it for our preview of the big final, Perth Scorchers versus the Sydney Sixers. It has to be asked now. We've been through the analysis. We've talked about both teams, how they got there. Jesse Hogan, who is going to walk away the champions of the inaugural Big Bash League?
Well, I look like a bit of a goose saying this, considering last week I actually picked the Melbourne Stars, but I will say in my defence, the start of the season I had Stars 1 and Scorchers 2. And since looking at the way the Scorchers accounted for the Stars last week, I just don't see any reason why they're going to be beaten, you know, in the first BBL final, especially at home. But I think the Sixers have done fantastically well to get there. Great balance and throughout their team. And I think the really good thing is that they've got so many bowling options that if Gibbs or someone else manages to get over after one or two of their sort of specialist bowlers, they've easily got enough options to cover that. So great depth there, and I think, you know, they are a legitimate chance to win, even though I don't think they will. Would not surprise me if they did.
Okay, so for Jesse Hogan, it is the Perth Scorchers to be the champions. For me, I actually think the Sydney Sixers are going to walk away, so we'll see what happens there. Everyone at home, don't forget, of course, tickets are sold out for the game. It's at the Wacker Saturday night, and don't forget, you can watch it on Fox Sports, or you can get to bigbash.com.au to get the scores. Or, of course, you can watch it on your phone, on your smartphone, on the Cricket Live app. Of course, it's 5 o'clock local time over in WA, which means it's 8 o'clock over in the eastern states. So good luck to your teams if they're involved. Everyone else, enjoy the game, and we'll see you next week for a wrap-up of this huge Big Bash final.